Hey, welcome back to yet another great episode of This Week in Christian History. And this week of September 15th, we are focusing in on an occasion of September 21st, 1944, which was the founding of the National Religious Broadcasters. And we are pleased to have as our guest today Troy Miller, who is the president and CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters, who's going to give us some more great info about the good things that you guys do. So thanks for joining us, Troy.
Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be with you guys.
Absolutely. So obviously, this was not something that they were worried about per se in the Reformation, or something that was going on during the first or second Great Awakenings. And so it's my guess is, even though they were all broadcasting and doing it their own way, it wasn't like they were together as an association, and electronic communication probably became the mother of necessity of invention for something. Is that kind of right, or do I have that totally backwards?
Yeah, it is kind of right. Christians have always struggled to have their voices heard in the public square. But when electronic media came about, specifically in 1944, radio, so when radio became this new form of mass media, there was a group of pastors that thought, well, right away, they were innovators. They were right away said, hey, this is a great way to get the gospel out. This is a great way to reach a lot of people for the cause of Christ. And so they decided that they wanted to be on radio. Well, there was another group of Christians, oddly enough,
Okay.
uh, the NEA, National Evangelical Association, and they decided they, along with the radio owners at the time, were going to be the gatekeepers of who could or couldn't be on Christian media. So that's kind of the out of where NRB was formed.
Wow. Wow. Just so to say, no, we think a consortium of those of us that are doing, maybe we didn't call it content, creation and production, but those of us that are preaching the sermons, or that are doing the songs, or doing whatever it is that's going on, we don't want to have to be dictated to by somebody else about what we would like to, what we believe is on our heart, or just by belief. We just don't like that idea. And somebody
Well,
else is not going to let us function that
look,
way.
look, we these were solid Americans as well as Christians. They understood the First Amendment. They believed that they had a right to be on radio, that nobody should be able to control that right of freedom of speech and the free exercise thereof of their religious conscience. So on two sides, so on the religious side, you have the NEA, who want to decide, you be the gatekeepers of which pastors could be on there and not. On the other
Mm.
side, you have the radio stations that were putting all these restrictions on there. You could only talk less than 15 minutes. You couldn't do
Uh,
this. You couldn't ask. You couldn't raise money. You couldn't, and so they had kind of two sides of the battle that they were going after. So they got together actually at Moody Church in Chicago. They first got together as a meeting within the NEAs. They were all NEA members, and they
oh,
got together within the NEA, had a meeting, and really tried to, kind of like the reformers, tried to reform the NEA,
right.
but they were having none of that. So they got together at Moody Church in Chicago and formed the National Religious Broadcasters Association. And the number one purpose of that, the formation of that association, was to fight on behalf of, at that time, those Christian communicators who wanted to be on mass media and in the public square.
How about that? So, how much of what the NRB does now is really interacting with Congress and the FCC and other things like this, making sure that Christian voices indeed can be heard, and that they're not being discriminated against, or excuse me, given equal time, or whatever is the right term for something like that?
Yeah, so just that was the root in 1944. The first thing they had to do was really advocate with the Federal Communications Commissions to get some of the rules changed to allow Christian broadcasting on there. Then they advocated with the radio stations, and actually in after 19 by 1945, 46, by 1947 they had gotten all of those things changed.
Wow.
All of those things changed. Broadcasters could be on, they could have a half-hour program, they could read the Bible, they could give their sermons, they could do a Bible study, could do all the things they wanted to do. So over the years, that's the core of what NRB does. If you look at what we do out of the 365 days of the year, it's really advocating on behalf of Christian communicators to make sure that there's no legislation that's going to come through Congress that prohibits them from being able to do that. There's no regulatory issues that are coming through the regulatory environment. The two biggest ones today we deal with are the Federal Communications Commission and the Federal Trade Commission. Those are
Mm,
the two big ones. But actually, to tell you, we deal with a lot of them, especially recently when government was kind of weaponized against Christian communicators. So we
right.
ended up dealing with everybody from the Labor Department to Health and Human Services, if you can imagine. So the core of what we do is that advocacy within there. We also do a lot within the judicial system, the legal system. We recently won a lawsuit against the Federal Communications Commission that they were trying to put some of these very onerous regulations on broadcasters that would require them to report basically all of their DEI compliance, all of their diversity, equity, and inclusion compliance. And so we took the Federal Communications Commission to court. We recently won that case, and so that protects our broadcasters, but actually ends up protecting all broadcasters out there
Sure.
from this. So that is really at the core of what we do.
How about that? So that is one of the reasons I guess that you're headquartered in Washington, D.C., right? So that you can get over there quick and you can attend hearings and you can know about briefs that are being, you don't want to have to get on a plane from Kansas City or Boise or somewhere and try to hoof it over there, right? I mean, it's a big difference.
Yeah, you want to keep your fingers on the pulse, and that's where the pulse is for all of these things is right there in Washington D.C.'s. And look, I don't want to say it's all from a negative view either. We do have a lot of stuff we do that's prevention, but we also have a lot that we do as proactive.
Mm,
So we look at laws and legislation that will help the environment for Christian communicators and all of our members. And by the way, let me just stop for a second and tell you, we
please.
represent today. 81 years ago, it was radio. And then, of course, as we move through time, radio, television, cable networks, then as cable systems came around, satellite, as that came around, of course, now digital, all things streaming. So today, the association is very diverse in its membership. We have radio and television owners and radio television program producers, and we have satellite program producers, and we have cable program producers, and then we have podcasters and bloggers and video bloggers and Substackers and TikTokers and Facebookers, you name it, they're all out there. And we also have Christian publishers today representing Christian publishing and authors. And then, of course, almost every church today is in media.
Sure.
Even whether it's in internal media or whether it's media going outside of their walls. So we have a really broad group we look at. And so it's a lot to keep that broad group. And let me give you one quick example, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Please.
Just people don't think. We had some legislation a few years back that would have affected microphones and things that worked in the church, your wireless microphones and the spectrums they were on and interference they might get or licensing you might have to have. So churches out there think, well, that doesn't really affect me. I just maybe stream or whatever. But we were working on a law that could have caused a lot of churches to get licensed or have interference. So it's a broad variety of issues and topics we get involved with.
Wow, wow. Well, that wasn't a pause. Let me ask about that question because I was going to ask you that question, right? So, how has it evolved? And I'm guessing just from an organizational standpoint, if somebody like you, by the way, we're enjoying our conversation right now with Troy Miller, who's the president and CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters, and we are identifying and talking about the anniversary of September 21st, 1944, whenever the NRB first kicked off and became organized. So, just as an association, though, I mean, as things have evolved, that I would imagine then you've got to bring people in on your team that can talk that language, right? I mean, somebody's got to talk digital, language to digital language people and say, no, 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 no. You guys have put in a, cookie on this, and that's not okay because the law says or whatever, right? I mean, it's
Right.
changing those kinds of things. My guess is, Troy, that you've surrounded yourself with really good people that know all that, and it's not all relying on you to have to be the guy, right?
Well, oh, that's right. That's exactly right. God has blessed us with some great people because, as you said, the team has to be a very diverse team. So we have an incredible general counsel in Mike Ferris, so who has to understand all the legal things that go on. Also has to understand how the legislative process works. So he
Hmm.
heads up our public policy team, and his team has to understand how that works, how the FCC works, and how the FTC work, and how all of those things, fit together. The good thing is, being an association, we have a really deep well of knowledge within people that are working on these things every day that we can tap into. So we can
Sure.
tap into radio engineers, and we can tap into video engineers, and we can tap into, program experts, and also even things like HR. We have a lot of HR people and stuff in the various organizations. So we can tap into all of those things. And that's kind of, for me, that's kind of the neat thing of leading an association, because you have not only are you doing a work for a lot of entities, but you have a lot of entities that you can reach into. So we have a very broad and deep reach we can do on, as you said, these areas where we need to be experts.
Sure, sure. Because it might be legislative, it might be regulatory, or it might be legal, right? I mean, in the sense that there's a lawsuit, or maybe you're having to defend who knows what. Not,
Right.
so keeping all these bullfrogs in the wheelbarrow, right? You put seven in and four jump back out, right? I mean, I guess that's part of what the whole world is about what you guys are focused on every day.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to put it. I've often used the old phrase we've all heard about herding cats, being a
Right.
farm boy from Nebraska, trying to herd all those cats together and get them in. And of course, today we have some new challenges as well, to just the whole governmental, institution out there. We also have the mainstream media that is very hostile to Christians often, and Christian communicators. And then recently, we have corporate America. For a long time, corporate America was very friendly to Christians, or neutral. But lately, because of a lot of the anti-Christian movement is in the corporate boardrooms,
Mm,
we have a lot of work in corporate America. So one of the positive, proactive things we're doing is to educate corporate America on who the Christian audience is, who are Christians, citizens, and Christian consumers across this country.
sure, sure. So you might be able to go back and tell the folks, our folks, by the way, really like, ice cream and XYZ cars and PDQ tires and whatever. And it might be a way to go, hey, are you guys thinking through this idea that there's a whole market of these people that like these things or buy these things or care about these things? Now, what is it that you are trying to sell or do, or, but, kind of open their eyes up to not thinking of, well, these Christians are just a bunch of bigots and all they want to do is don't like a bunch of people instead of trying to understand who they're trying to help people. What an interesting piece that is. I'm quite sure that at Moody Church in 1944, they weren't thinking about that because they didn't have to think about that. But you guys have got to continually think about things like that. And that's why you've got a board, right? And you've got people that are involved in all these different media that are able to talk into that and go, hey, time out, just like what came off with the whole stuff about TikTok, for example, or whatever. you guys being involved in part of that dialogue and conversation is probably both internal and external. Is that
Oh,
sort of
that's
right?
exactly right. So we have committees that look at different areas of the industry. They look at different aspects of the industry, radio and television and digital and international as well. So those are there. We have advisory groups that help us to figure out those issues. That go on there. And then we do a lot of research too ourselves. So,
Mm,
just to give you an example, we just finished a major project with the Barna Group,
okay.
Barna Research, and they're a very well known, very respected research entity. And we just wanted to understand the impact, that Christian media is having in the marketplace. And so, one of the things that we use and we'll be telling Capitol Hill is that 60% of the American population. This is 60% of Americans, general, not churchgoers, not just Americans. 60% of Americans use some form of Christian media. That's
How
it.
about?
Yeah, so that's a huge number. And even letting corporate America know that. Look, 60% of America they're out here consuming corporate or consuming, Christian media. And then I'll just give you a couple more anecdotal out of this because they're really kind
Please.
of neat for today's culture in there. Often again, we're dispelling stereotypes. So you think, oh, there's like you said, oh, Christians are just these uneducated, backwoods sort of folks, and they're also old folks. They're probably all older people. Well, look, our survey revealed one of the most shocking things was that Gen Z leads the way. Gen Z with 64% engaging with Christian social media accounts.
Wow.
Gen Z, followed by millennials at 58%. So while we still have a very strong amongst baby boomers and X-Geners, Gen Z and the millennials leading the way with the engagement in the Christian communications in the Christian media. And so those are just some of the things we, help dispel those stereotypes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's probably because a whole lot of folks there are searching. And when they're searching to try to find, let's just call it a greater, bigger way of maybe of a quip way of saying the meaning of life or whatever. If they're going to do that searching, they're not taking a library card and going down and checking out a book, right? I mean,
Yeah, right.
this is where they're searching. This is where they're looking and they're trying to understand these things. And so that might I would guess kind of connect to what that research was saying.
Oh, absolutely. And with some other research you've seen, come out from some other groups recently, the number of Bible sales is up, so Bible sales are up. Engagement on Bible apps are up, and younger, males going to church, rejoining in church grew 19%. And so
Wow.
you pull all those things together, and I think what you look at is to say there's a real rejection of a lot of the mainstream messaging today, and people are looking for that. Matter of fact, the top thing that people said, why are you searching out Christian media, was for hope and encouragement.
Wow.
They were looking for hope and they were looking for encouragement, and I look at that as a rejection of the mainstream messaging that isn't giving that.
Wow. Fantastic. So, hey, tell us more where folks want to learn more about what if I'm not a broadcaster and I'm just a podcast listener, or I'm just somebody who might just be interested in following the things that you guys are doing. How do they connect with NRB?
Well, I'll tell you something really neat about today. I say we live in the golden age of communication. Never before in the history of humanity have we been able to instantly reach anybody anywhere in the world. And the average social media person, so that's a Facebook account or an X account or whatever, they have their network circle is over 450 people. 450 people. So everybody's a communicator. So you can go to nrb.org, and that's our main website. You can find out about all of these issues we talked about, all the things that we're working on, all the different legislative, legal, regulatory things in the media, all of those things we're working on. You can find out there. You can also find out about our annual NRB convention, our conference that's held every year. It's the largest gathering of Christian communicators. We have an exhibit floor, over 60,000 square feet, over 250 exhibitors that'll be there. And so even if you just want to be a better communicator on your social media, or
Mm,
you want to get into podcasting or blogging, or you want to do short videos for YouTube, you'll find the experts there that'll really help you engage in excellence. And you also might see your favorite radio, television, Christian personality in the hallway and
there you
walk
go.
up and say hi to them.
Fantastic. NRB.org, right? That's where I can learn so much more about the great work that you guys are doing at the National Religious Broadcasters. Troy Miller, thank you for making time for us today, helping us understand this component of Christian history and this part of the history of the church and the history of Christianity very much continues to evolve based off of what the needs are. And so this is a great example to know we're not all just talking about the Gutenberg printing press, although that's certainly something good to talk about. So, okay. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.